She snatched the cadet's weapon, and the arena scanner flagged her. Unclassified Apex, the arena was built to impress and intimidate at the same time. It was wide enough to fit armored vehicles, tall enough for aerial combat, and surrounded by transparent energy walls that shimmered like trapped lightning. Thousands of alien spectators filled the rising seats, their bodies glowing, scaled, feathered, or armored depending on their species. Above them all floated the Academy's scanners, silent machines that watched every breath, every heartbeat, every movement. This was the Interstellar Combat Academy, where future defenders, enforcers, and commanders of the galaxy were tested. Here, strength was measured, reflexes were ranked, and species were quietly judged. Humans were near the bottom of those judgments. They were not the weakest species, but they were never considered impressive. Too fragile compared to armored races, too slow compared to multi-limbed predators, too emotional compared to cold-minded tacticians. Humans passed the academy but rarely stood out. Most species believed humans survived the galaxy through numbers, alliances, and luck. Today was another evaluation day. Mixed species cadets stood on opposite sides of the arena, waiting for simulated combat drills to begin. This was not a war zone, but injuries were common. Pain was expected. Fear was part of the lesson. Near the edge of the arena stood a human woman in a plain gray uniform. She did not wear cadet markings, no rank symbols, no combat armor. She was support staff, assigned to logistics and emergency response. Her job was simple: monitor vitals, report injuries, and step in only if someone was about to die. Her name was Mara Ellison. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the arena with calm eyes. She had been here many times before. She knew the patterns. She knew how alien cadets often pushed human trainees harder than necessary. She also knew how instructors sometimes looked away, calling it cross-species conditioning. Across the arena, a human cadet named Jalen stepped forward. He was young, nervous, and clearly aware of the eyes on him. His opponent was a senior cadet from a dominant warrior species, taller, heavier, with dense muscle plating along his arms and chest. The alien species had never lost a one-on-one match against a human. The signal sounded. The match began fast. The alien cadet advanced with confidence, heavy steps shaking the arena floor. Jalen tried to keep distance, using his training weapon to create space. At first, it worked. He dodged, rolled, and redirected strikes. The crowd watched with mild interest. Then the alien cadet grew impatient. He charged. Jalen raised his weapon to block, but the impact was too strong. The force knocked the weapon from his hands. It skidded across the arena floor, spinning to a stop near the boundary line. Unarmed. The rules allowed limited close combat, but this was where most human cadets failed. Jalen stumbled backward, panic flashing across his face. The alien cadet smiled, a clear display of dominance in his culture. The instructors did not stop the match. Mara's eyes narrowed. The alien cadet struck again, faster now. Jalen tried to dodge but slipped. He fell hard onto his back. The alien raised his arm for a finishing blow, one that was supposed to stop short, but Mara could see the angle, the speed, the lack of restraint. This was not training anymore. Her body moved before her mind finished the thought. Mara stepped forward. Protocol said she should wait for the instructors. Protocol said she was not authorized to enter the arena. Protocol said interference would result in immediate disciplinary action. She crossed the energy boundary anyway. The barrier rippled as she passed through, alarms beginning to rise in pitch. Several spectators laughed, assuming this was some kind of error. A support human wandering into a combat zone. Mara did not look at them. She ran. The fallen weapon was closer to her than to anyone else. She reached it just as the alien cadet's strike descended toward Jalen. Her hand closed around the weapon. In one smooth motion, she twisted, stepped, and brought the weapon up, not to strike but to block. The impact rang through the arena, a sharp metallic sound that echoed in sudden silence. The alien cadet froze. No one had expected resistance from her. The scanners reacted instantly. Unauthorized presence detected. Unregistered subject. Threat analysis initiated. Mara did not hear the warnings. Her focus was narrow, clear, and absolute. She moved between the alien cadet and the fallen human trainee without hesitation. Her stance was balanced, grounded, and steady in a way that did not match her appearance. The alien cadet snarled and attacked again. Mara shifted. She did not match his strength. She redirected it. She turned his momentum against him, stepping inside his reach, twisting his arm just enough to break balance without causing harm. The alien stumbled, shocked more than injured. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The scanners hovered closer, lights flashing rapidly. Data streams poured in. Species, human. Role, non-combatant. Threat level, calculating. The alien cadet recovered and swung wide, aiming to end the embarrassment quickly. Mara ducked, pivoted, and used the weapon to hook behind his leg. He crashed to the ground with a heavy thud that shook the arena floor. She stepped back immediately. She did not press the advantage. She did not strike him while he was down. She turned and knelt beside Jalen instead, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Stay still," she said calmly. "You're safe." Her voice carried clearly in the sudden quiet. The instructors were on their feet now, shouting commands, trying to override the system lockdown. Security drones deployed from the ceiling, weapons charging but not firing. The scanners froze. Their lights shifted from yellow to red. Threat classification failed. Reattempt failed. A new designation appeared across every display in the arena, projected in large, glowing symbols that no one had ever seen before. Unclassified Apex. Silence swallowed the crowd. The instructors stared at the readouts, disbelief written across faces of every species. The scanners were ancient, constantly updated systems designed to measure everything from muscle density to neural reaction speed. They did not invent labels without reason. The alien cadet slowly pushed himself up, staring at Mara with wide, confused eyes. Fear flickered across his features, not because she looked dangerous, but because the system had said she was something beyond known limits. Mara gently helped Jalen sit up, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. His breathing steadied. He was shaken but alive. She stood and finally looked around. Only then did she seem to realize where she was. Security drones surrounded her, humming with restrained power. Instructors shouted for her to drop the weapon. Spectators leaned forward, silent and tense. Mara placed the weapon on the ground and stepped back, raising her hand slowly. "I intervened to prevent fatal injury," she said evenly. "That is within emergency response parameters." No one answered. The scanners continued to hover, lights locked on her, repeating the same unreadable status. Unclassified Apex. Mara felt the adrenaline begin to fade, leaving behind a familiar calm exhaustion. She did not feel powerful. She did not feel special. She felt the same way she always did after a crisis, relieved that no one had died. The energy barrier flared as instructors finally forced the arena to unlock. Medical teams rushed in. Jalen was taken away for treatment. The alien cadet was escorted out in stunned silence. Mara remained where she was, surrounded by machines and eyes that now looked at her differently. Above her, the scanners did not power down. They simply watched. And somewhere deep in the Academy's systems, a quiet alert was logged for the first time in its long history. Human potential. Measurement inconclusive. The arena did not return to noise after the match ended. Even when the medical teams cleared the floor and the energy walls dimmed, the silence stayed heavy, like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Spectators whispered in low tones, their languages overlapping, confused and uneasy. They had come to watch another human lose. Instead, They had witnessed something no one could explain. Mara Ellison was escorted from the arena by security drones and 2 instructors. They did not restrain her, but they did not relax either. The drones followed her movements closely, weapons powered but unfired. Mara walked calmly, her hands loose at her sides, her breathing steady. Inside, her heart was slowing, returning to its normal rhythm. She had not meant to cause chaos. She had only seen a life about to end. They led her into a wide observation chamber made of smooth alloy and transparent walls. Beyond the glass, rows of analysts and officers watched her closely. Species she recognized and many she did not. Some stared with fear, others with curiosity, a few with something close to respect. The door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. Mara stood alone in the center of the room. Above her, scanners activated again. Light washed over her body, warm and precise. She felt the familiar sensation of being measured, mapped, and analyzed, though this time the machine seemed almost uncertain. Data streamed across the walls. Heart rate, stable. Neural activity, elevated but controlled. Muscle response, within human range, then spiking under predictive models. The system paused, recalibrating. Mara looked up at the ceiling, expression neutral. She had been scanned before, countless times during her work at the academy. Nothing unusual had ever appeared. Until now, an instructor stepped forward, projecting his image into the room. He was tall, his species known for rigid discipline and strict adherence to rules. His voice was sharp but measured. "State your name and role," he said. "Mara Ellison," she replied. "Emergency response and logistics support. Human contingent. Are you trained in combat? No. Have you received any form of biological enhancement? No. Are you concealing equipment or augmentation? No." The instructor studied the data in front of him, his crest tightening slightly in what passed for confusion. "Explain your actions in the arena." Mara took a breath. A cadet was about to receive a lethal strike. The instructors did not intervene. "I did." "That was not your decision to make," another voice said. This one belonged to a senior observer from a dominant warrior species. His tone carried authority and offense. "You violated protocol and humiliated a ranked cadet." Mara turned her gaze toward him. She did not glare. She did not bow. "He was going to die," she said simply. The room fell quiet again. The scanners chimed softly, signaling another failure to classify. The words "unclassified apex" remained fixed on the main display, glowing steadily like a warning. Several analysts argued in hushed tones. Some demanded a threat assessment. Others questioned the scanner's integrity. A few suggested immediate isolation. The lead instructor raised a hand for silence. "Why did the system flag you?" he asked Mara. "You did not overpower your opponent. You did not display excessive force." Mara thought for a moment. She searched for the right words, then spoke honestly. "I wasn't trying to fight him," she said. "I was trying to stop him." The analysts exchanged looks. "That distinction is irrelevant," the warrior observer said. Mara shook her head slowly. "For humans, it's not." The scanners pulsed again. New data appeared, highlighting something unusual. Mara's neural patterns showed extreme focus but not aggression. Her stress markers were low. Her reaction speed, however, had spiked far beyond her baseline at the exact moment the cadet was in danger. A human officer stepped forward among the observers. He wore a simple uniform and carried no visible rank symbols, but his presence shifted the room's energy. "She's a civilian responder," he said calmly. "Her record is clean. No combat history, no enhancements." "Then explain this," the warrior observer demanded, gesturing toward the display. The human officer studied the data quietly. "Humans don't all respond to danger the same way," he said. "Some of us specialize." "Specialize," the instructor repeated. "In survival," the human said. "Not our own, others." The room grew tense. Mara felt the weight of attention pressing down on her. She did not feel proud, she did not feel afraid. Mostly she felt tired. The kind of tired that came after emergencies when the body remembered what could have happened. "Did you know you could do that?" the instructor asked. Mara considered the question carefully. "I knew I could stop him," she said. "I didn't know how." That answer unsettled them more than anything else. The scanners shifted perspective, replaying the arena footage frame by frame. Mara watched herself move with impossible clarity. She saw how she stepped at the perfect angle, how her timing matched the alien's strength exactly. She did not recognize the person on the screen as someone extraordinary. She recognized her as someone focused, someone who refused to hesitate. The warrior observer leaned forward. "Your species hides this ability." The human officer shook his head. "No, we don't advertise it." "There's a difference." "Why?" another observer asked. "Because it's not a weapon," the human said. "It's a response." The debate grew louder. Some called for further testing. Others demanded she be barred from the academy. A few quietly suggested recruitment. Mara stood still through it all. Finally, the instructor addressed her again. "You will remain under observation until we determine the nature of this classification." Mara nodded. "Understood." She was escorted to a holding suite, comfortable but sealed, overlooking a section of the academy where cadets trained in controlled environments. From the window, she could see groups of different species sparring, laughing, failing, learning. She wondered how many times she had watched similar scenes without thinking. Now every movement she made was tracked. Hours passed. Analysts ran simulations. They fed her data into the scanners again and again, changing variables, adjusting thresholds. Each time the system refused to place her into any known category. Combatant, no. Civilian, no. Threat, uncertain. Always the same result: unclassified apex. The term apex caused particular concern. In most species languages, it meant predator, ruler, uncontested dominance. But when analysts broke down the scanner's logic, they found something unexpected. The system had not labeled Mara apex because she was strongest. It had labeled her apex because she ended the conflict with minimal harm, maximum efficiency, and zero hesitation when a life was at risk. The system did not measure morality, but it did measure outcomes. Meanwhile, word spread through the academy. Cadets whispered in corridors. Some laughed nervously. Others looked at human trainees with new caution. Jalen, recovering in the medical wing, replayed the moment again and again in his mind. He remembered Mara's voice more than her movements. "You're safe." That memory stayed with him. Late in the cycle, the human officer returned to Mara's holding suite. He stood by the window beside her, hands behind his back. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said quietly. "I know," Mara replied. "But they're afraid," he continued. "Not of you, of what you represent." Mara looked out at the training floor. "I don't represent anything," she said. "I just reacted." "That's exactly it," the officer said. Across the academy, a new advisory alert was quietly issued to senior staff. It was short and carefully worded. Human response thresholds are not linear. Avoid escalating scenarios involving human noncombatants. Further study required. Mara never saw the alert. She only felt the shift. The way guards stood a little farther back. The way scanners followed her longer. The way conversations stopped when she entered a room. She was still the same person. But the galaxy had started to look at humans differently. And somewhere deep in the Academy's systems, the scanner ran one last background calculation, if provoked again. Outcome prediction, decisive. The system logged the result and went silent, waiting for the next moment when a human would choose to act. The Academy did not announce what it was doing with Mara Ellison, but everyone felt the change. Training schedules shifted. Mixed species drills were quietly adjusted. Human cadets were no longer placed automatically in disadvantaged positions. No one said why, yet the reason moved through the halls like an unseen current. Mara remained under observation, but not confinement. She was allowed to continue her support duties, though now she was never alone. Scanners followed her path. Analysts watched her work. Instructors observed how she spoke, how she moved, how she reacted to small problems and quiet emergencies. They saw nothing unusual. That made them more nervous than if they had. Mara assisted injured cadets, calibrated equipment, and logged supply reports exactly as she always had. She smiled when spoken to. She apologized when she bumped into someone. She drank her nutrient pack slowly, staring out observation windows during breaks. To her, life felt normal again. To the academy, it felt like waiting for an aftershock. Several days after the arena incident, a closed-door council was held. Representatives from multiple species gathered in a secure chamber far below the training levels. At the center of discussion was a simple question that no one could answer. Was Mara Ellison an exception, or was she a warning? The scanner data was projected in full detail. Neural graphs, reaction time spikes, movement prediction curves. One analyst highlighted a key moment from the arena footage. She did not decide to act, the analyst said. The action and the decision occurred at the same instant. That is impossible, another replied. For our species, the analyst corrected. The human representative stood quietly until he was asked to speak. Humans evolved under constant threat, he said. Predators, disasters, other humans. Over time, some of us developed responses that bypass hesitation when protecting others. It's not common, it's not controllable, and it's not something we can turn on for your tests. The warrior species observer crossed his arms. Then how many more like her exist? The human paused. We don't know. That answer echoed through the chamber long after the meeting ended. Back on the training levels, tension finally broke when a formal challenge was issued. The species of the humiliated alien cadet demanded clarification. They claimed the match outcome was invalid, influenced by system error and human interference. To them, honor required resolution. A controlled evaluation was proposed, not a duel, an observation scenario. Mara was informed of this request while restocking a medical station. The instructor delivering the message looked uncomfortable. They want to see it again, he said, under controlled conditions. Mara set down a supply crate slowly. See what? The instructor hesitated. What the scanner saw. Mara felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Not fear, responsibility. I don't perform, she said. I respond. That may not be acceptable, the instructor replied. Then that's your answer, Mara said calmly. The request moved up the chain. Pressure increased. Political language entered the discussion. Some species began implying humans were hiding a strategic advantage. Others suggested restrictions on human movement within the academy. Human leadership pushed back quietly but firmly. In the end, a compromise was reached. There would be no combat. Instead, Mara would be placed in a high-stress simulation environment designed to test decision-making, not fighting ability. No opponents, no weapons, only cascading crises. Mara agreed. The simulation chamber was massive, capable of recreating planetary disasters, ship failures, and civilian emergencies. Observers filled the control rooms above, watching closely as Mara entered alone. The scenario began without warning: a space station evacuation. Power failures, structural breaches, multiple life signs fading rapidly, alarms layered over alarms. The system escalated faster than any standard drill. Mara did not freeze, she moved. She prioritized instantly, not consciously but clearly. She rerouted power. She sealed breaches manually. She guided virtual civilians through collapsing corridors, sometimes choosing one group over another with visible pain but no delay. Her breathing stayed even. Her hands never shook. The scanners recorded everything. Neural load increased but not chaotically. Stress hormones spiked briefly, then stabilized. Reaction times sharpened instead of degrading. At one point, the system introduced an impossible choice: 2 failing life support nodes, only one reachable in time. Mara paused for half a second. Then she changed the system. She rewrote the emergency routing, sacrificing non-essential systems, pushing herself past safe limits, reaching both nodes seconds before failure. Observers stared in disbelief. That wasn't in the parameters, one analyst whispered. She didn't accept the choice, another said. She rejected it. The simulation ended automatically. Silence filled the control room. The scanner result appeared again unchanged. Unclassified apex. Mara exited the chamber slowly, exhaustion finally visible in her posture. She leaned against the wall, eyes closed, breathing deep. A medical officer approached. "Are you injured?" "No," Mara said. "Just tired." The word apex was debated again, this time with more understanding. Analysts finally decoded the scanner's deeper logic. Apex did not mean strongest. It meant last option. The system labeled Mara Apex because when no solution remained within expected boundaries, she created one. When rules failed, she adapted. When choices became unacceptable, she refused them. She was not a predator. She was a resolver. This realization spread through the academy quietly. Instructors began rethinking how they pushed human cadets. Alien trainees started watching humans differently, noticing how they worked together, how they stepped forward in crises, how they took responsibility even when it cost them. Jalen, now recovered, requested to see Mara. When he was allowed, he struggled to find the right words. "You saved my life," he said finally. Mara shook her head. "You did most of the work, I just didn't let it end there." He nodded, understanding more than she expected. Across the academy, a new informal phrase began circulating among staff. "Don't corner the humans." Not because they would attack, but because they would act. And once they did, there was no predicting where the line between impossible and inevitable would fall. Mara returned to her duties, still watched, still measured, but now with something else added to the gaze around her. Respect and a little fear, because the galaxy was beginning to understand a truth humans had never bothered to explain. They did not seek to dominate, but when lives were on the line, they would not accept failure as an answer. Part 4. 1,800 words ka leko or interesting hunachea or third-person style, ma lekni ha or simple basic English ka or violated free hona chai, without short heading. The academy tried to return to normal after the simulation, but normal no longer fit the shape of things. Too much had changed. Not loudly, not openly, but deep in how decisions were made and how humans were watched. Mara Ellison was no longer just support staff. She was not promoted, not given a title, and not assigned a command. Yet her presence altered rooms before she spoke. Conversations paused when she entered. Arguments softened. Instructors hesitated before pushing situations too far. She noticed it, but she did not comment. To Mara, the simulation had been draining, but it had also been clear. The academy had wanted proof. She had given them truth instead. Not strength, not dominance, but refusal. Refusal to let bad options stand as final. The Warrior Species Council, however, was not satisfied. Their cadets' humiliation still burned. To them, the issue was no longer the arena incident or the scanner label. It was what came after. Humans were being treated differently. Adjustments were being made quietly without formal agreement. They demanded resolution. This time, the challenge was direct. A controlled arena engagement, fully authorized, recorded, and overseen by the highest council members. Not a punishment, not revenge, a demonstration. They did not want to fight Mara, they wanted to measure her. The request reached human leadership first. The answer was delayed. Discussions stretched for cycles. Risks were weighed carefully. Refusal could be seen as confirmation of hidden intent. Agreement could set a dangerous precedent. When the request reached Mara, she was repairing a damaged med-drone. She listened in silence as the instructor explained the proposal. They want you in the arena again, he said, but with restrictions. No lethal intent, no ranking system, observation only. Mara tightened a bolt, then powered the drone down. I don't want to be a symbol, she said quietly. I know, the instructor replied, but they already made you one. She looked up at him. And if I say no, the instructor hesitated. They'll say humans are hiding something, and next time they won't ask. Mara leaned back against the workbench. She felt the weight again, the familiar pressure of responsibility settling into her chest. Who decides the conditions? She asked. You do, he said. That was the compromise. Mara closed her eyes for a moment, then nodded. Then I'll do it, she said, but not the way they expect. The arena was reconfigured for the event. No cheering crowd, no competitive layout. The stands were filled only with observers, analysts, and council members. Every scanner was calibrated to maximum sensitivity. Mara entered wearing plain clothing. No armor, no rank markings, no weapon. Across from her stood 3 elite cadets from different species, all highly trained, all experienced, all chosen for control rather than aggression. The rules were simple. They would advance. She would respond. No strikes intended to cause permanent harm, no lethal force. The exercise would end when all participants were incapacitated or disengaged. The signal sounded. The first cadet advanced cautiously, testing distance. Mara did not move. Her hands were open at her sides, posture relaxed but ready. When the cadet lunged, she stepped aside, redirecting momentum with minimal contact. He stumbled, surprised, but recovered quickly. The second cadet attacked from the side, faster, more aggressive. Mara pivoted, lowered her center of gravity, and used his own force to unbalance him. He fell, rolling away before she could disengage. The third cadet waited. He studied her carefully, eyes narrowed. Then he changed tactics, retreating, forcing her to move first. Mara didn't. She stood still. The silence stretched. Finally, the cadet advanced again, this time coordinating with the others. They moved together, attempting to surround her. Mara stepped forward, not to attack, to close the space. She moved between them, not striking but disrupting timing, breaking formation, forcing hesitation. Each time a cadet committed to an action, she was already there, adjusting, redirecting, ending the move before it could finish. Within moments, all 3 were off balance, disoriented, and breathing hard. Mara stepped back. I don't want to fight you, she said evenly. I want you to stop. The cadets hesitated. That hesitation ended the exercise. The instructors called it. The cadets disengaged, frustration and disbelief clear on their faces. The scanners processed the data. Once again, the result did not change. Unclassified apex. But this time something else appeared alongside it. Status, stable. The council chamber erupted in debate. She didn't overpower them, one observer said. She dismantled the scenario. She controlled the engagement without dominance, another replied. The warrior species representative leaned forward, voice tight. This is unacceptable. You claim no intent to dominate, yet you demonstrate complete control. The human representative answered calmly. Control is not domination, it's responsibility. The words hung in the air. Mara was escorted from the arena without ceremony. No applause, no celebration. She returned to her quarters, exhausted but calm. She had done what she believed was necessary, nothing more. Hours later, an internal directive was issued. Arena protocols were revised. Human participants would no longer be evaluated solely on combat metrics. New parameters were added: adaptability, crisis response, ethical decision-making under pressure. Other species protested. The directive remained. The Academy could not ignore what it had seen. Over the following days, smaller changes followed. Training simulations shifted focus. Instructors intervened earlier in cross-species drills. The phrase acceptable loss quietly disappeared from several curriculum documents. Mara noticed these changes in small ways. Fewer injuries, more pauses, more conversations. One evening she stood on a balcony overlooking the Academy's central spire. The stars beyond were sharp and distant. The human officer joined her, leaning against the railing. "You changed things," he said. "I didn't mean to," Mara replied. "That doesn't matter," he said. "Results matter." She was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what scares them?" she asked. "That we don't accept the results we're given?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." Below them, cadets of different species trained together under softer lights. There was still competition, still struggle, but less cruelty. Less silent acceptance of failure. The Academy was learning. Reluctantly. Far away, reports from this evaluation reached other institutions. Military councils, research hubs, defense coalitions. They read the words carefully. Unclassified apex. Status, stable. Some felt fear. Others felt relief. Because the galaxy had long measured power by destruction. Now it was being forced to consider something more dangerous. Refusal to let the worst outcome happen. Mara returned to her quiet routines, still watched, still analyzed, but no longer pushed toward explanation. The Academy had stopped asking what she was. Instead, it was asking what humans had always been. Not conquerors, not predators, but the ones who stepped forward when everyone else accepted that nothing more could be done. And that understanding, once seated, was already spreading. The Academy did not hold a closing ceremony for what had happened. There were no banners, no speeches, no official announcement declaring change. Instead, the shift settled in quietly, like gravity adjusting its pull. Everyone felt it, even if few spoke about it. Mara Ellison returned fully to her work. She repaired drones, checked vitals, filled reports, and responded to emergencies the same way she always had. Her steps through the corridors were steady. Her voice stayed calm. If she noticed the way people watched her now, she gave no sign. The scanners still followed her. They always would, but something in the way they watched had changed. They no longer searched for threat. They monitored for imbalance, for moments when pressure might force another choice no one wanted to face. Other species began to request joint training with human teams. Not because humans were stronger, but because they were reliable when plans broke down. Human cadets were placed into crisis lead roles more often. Not commanders, not enforcers, but stabilizers. The Academy's data reflected it clearly. When humans were present, casualty projections dropped. When humans were removed, losses increased. No one liked what that implied, but no one could deny it. The Warrior Species Council issued a final statement weeks later. It was carefully worded, stripped of emotion, but its meaning was clear. The matter was considered resolved, honor restored. Mara was no longer mentioned by name. That, more than anything, told her the truth. They had accepted that she was not a problem to be removed. She was a reality to be adapted to. One cycle later, the Academy received an emergency transmission from a nearby training outpost. A multi-species exercise had gone wrong. A structural failure, fire, life support instability. The local command froze, overwhelmed by conflicting priorities. The request was simple. They asked for a human response advisor. Mara was already moving before the message finished playing. She arrived at the outpost with a small team. No authority, no weapons. Just medical kits, engineering tools, and portable scanners. As soon as they stepped inside, alarms screamed from every direction. Cadets panicked. Instructors argued. Systems failed in cascading waves. Mara raised her voice, not loud but firm. "Listen to me," she said. "We can fix this, but only if you stop trying to save everything at once." They listened. They always did. She split tasks not by rank but by capability. She redirected power. She sealed breaches manually when automated systems lagged. She made hard calls, choosing which areas to stabilize first and which to abandon temporarily. Not one decision was perfect, but all of them worked together. The outpost survived. Every life inside it survived too. When it was over, an alien instructor sat heavily against a wall, hands shaking. "You didn't hesitate," he said. Mara shook her head. "I did, just not for long." Word spread faster after that. Not rumors, not stories, but doctrine changes. Training manuals were updated across multiple systems. New guidance appeared in academy databases. When human personnel intervene, defer escalation. Human crisis response indicates non-hostile intent. Do not force zero-sum outcomes in human-led scenarios. One line appeared repeatedly, translated into dozens of languages. Never corner a human who is protecting someone else. It was not written as a threat. It was written as advice. Mara never saw herself as part of history. She never sat back and thought about what she had changed. She measured her days by smaller things. A cadet who walked away uninjured. A system that powered back on. A moment when panic faded into control. One evening, she received a quiet request. A council observer wanted to speak with her privately. The meeting took place in a simple room, no scanners visible, no guards standing close. The observer studied her for a long time before speaking. "What are you?" he asked. Mara frowned slightly. "Human," he hesitated. "That is not what I mean." She considered him carefully, then answered. "I'm someone who doesn't accept unnecessary endings," she said. "If that's what you're asking." The observer looked down at his hands. "Our systems are built to measure strength, fear, dominance." We did not know how to measure refusal. Mara's voice softened. "You don't need to measure it. You just need to make room for it." The observer nodded slowly. Across the galaxy, the Interstellar Combat Academy's final report on the incident was archived. It contained no dramatic language, no accusations, no praise, just conclusions. Human potential is context-dependent. Human response scales with moral urgency. Human threat classification remains non-static. At the end of the report, a single sentence was added by the system itself, without instruction or prompt. Human outcomes cannot be predicted when loss is unacceptable. The designation unclassified apex was never removed. It was never applied to another individual either. Not because Mara was unique, but because the system had learned something important. Apex did not belong to a person. It belonged to a moment when rules failed, when power was not enough, when someone decided that the cost was too high. Humans did not dominate the galaxy. They did not conquer it. They stood inside its failures and refused to let them stand. Mara returned to her duties the next day, just as she always had. The stars outside the academy burned quietly, indifferent and distant. But somewhere among them, new policies were written, new training was planned, and new assumptions were being dismantled. All because one human had stepped forward, not to win, not to fight, but to say no. No, this does not end here. And the galaxy, slowly and carefully, learned to listen.